Hi guys. Buenas. We cannot hear, huh?
Sorry, I know I wasn't chatting. It's 4 minutes after the hour, and I promised that we would get everybody out on a timely. Hopefully less time than that. That's okay. All right, so let's go ahead and call this meeting of the Hagåtña Restoration and Redevelopment Authority to order. I have 4:05 p.m. On Wednesday, September 4th. So the first item is attendance. So for the record, we have myself, the chairwoman, Maria Leon Guerrero. We have Commissioner Felix Benedetti. We have the vice chair and Commissioner Patty Ada. We have Commissioner Wes. We also have the acting BSP director.
Yeah. Matt Santos.
Matt Santos. And then can I have everyone else just state their name and position for the record?
Remy, HRRA Meeting.
Tammy, I'm one program coordinator. Sorry.
Edwin Regis, one post management program and staffing by director.
Okay, wonderful. So I think that's and then we have online joining us. Remy, can you confirm who's online with us?
Dr. Madrid, Carlos Madrid, and Ms. Christine Wolk are on Zoom.
Okay, great. Happy day, everybody. Okay, so next on our agenda, we have the acknowledgement of the public notices in the Guam Daily Post. The first notice was published on August 29th. The second notice on September 2nd. That's just for informational purposes. The secretary's report, we have Dr. Madrid. Would you like
Yes.
to?
Can I be heard? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, the minutes of the previous meeting have been passed for review, and if I would like to make a motion for approving them.
All in favor of approving minutes?
Right.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries, minutes are approved. We also need to approve the agenda for today.
We'll make a
Yeah.
motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, our agenda is approved. And for the treasurer's report, Remy, would you like to walk us through that? Treasurer's report? Oh, sorry, Matt.
Yeah, sure.
The treasurer's.
So the first page is going to be the general fund account for FY 2024. And this should as up to August 27th, 2024. right now there's of the $364,000 and $471,000. There's $243,336.29 available.
Okay.
And then the following two, I think you guys updated this with UVMR, right? So confirmed. So there's two funds that have kind of lapsed since 2019 and 2020. One's the tourist attraction fund and the other one's their surplus account. Of the tourist attraction fund that's lapsed into 2024, currently available of 142,000. And for the oh, I'm sorry, and there's zero, right, for the,
Hotel.
yeah, I'm sorry, we actually, so you guys updated this.
Yes,
There's no more in the surplus account, right?
no more.
Okay. So
And
this,
for the tab,
yeah,
it shows here in the notes that, that it's. So are these funds? Available?
yeah, it says shall lapse, it shall continue to be available until fully expended. So they are lapsed because they continue.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't know why that note should probably be updated to that it's still available.
so after September, this is still, this amount?
Yeah, so in the law that doesn't, it's basically, it's, there's no sunset on the funds. I mean, there's a general provision within the budget usually that has subject to the availability of funds, but per BUMR, these funds are still available for the HRRA.
And then can we just clarify, where these funds were set aside from the tourist attraction fund?
Yeah, so previous to the pandemic, there was a tourist attraction fund appropriation. And then the other one was it Department of Labor, I believe?
We had FEMA funding, we had.
Oh, no,
DOI.
I think there was another local account. But due to the pandemic, everything became general fund after that, because general fund was actually covering all tourist attractions, so all subsequent budgets were all just general fund.
Okay.
So this was never used. I mean, I can't really explain why. Lolo doesn't know as well. But per BMR, these funds are still available.
Okay.
And I think when the transition occurred and you guys were brought on board, nobody was really kind of aware that these funds really existed. But after an audit of all their accounts, it was found that there's two fund sources that were still open.
So same situation for the.
Yeah, and again, they're not allotted though. So that's the only thing. So it's subject to their being released.
Mhm.
But by law, that they're technically entitled to these amounts available. Then this DOI operations offset, again, this is probably another fund that's not going to continue because we don't get compact impact. So this is the balance left from funds not spent for planning services with their prior contractor.
So this money needs to be expended before this end date of December 30, 2020.
I know it's available until the end of next fiscal year. We have ARPA, ARPA, American Rescue Plan, state and local fiscal recovery funds. There's about $2,000 available. These need to be obligated by the end of the year. And you guys don't have anything to encumber it as well. So you need to figure out something to.
I thought this was the one where Lola said that she has all these like purchases in progress to replace the equipment that was damaged in the typhoon, but.
Yeah, I guess it is
it's
for the
been a while.
Logitech, but it's not been encumbered yet. So they have to do the procurement for it to actually obligate it by the end of the year.
There, originally it was coming from ARPA, but we they were for this year, because we tried doing it last fiscal year, but then the procurement never went through, so we purchased them again this year, and they're still not fully encumbered yet. Or there's no PO for them yet, and they're under GF right now. Not
Okay.
from our part.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily up high on the list at GSA,
Yeah.
and especially with when we're closing out the fiscal year.
Yeah.
At the end of the,
So more than likely, it's not gonna happen.
yeah, it's gonna have to, yeah, so you basically, if you haven't encumbered something, you basically have to restart the process. So that's something they'll have to do.
Yeah.
And then the last page is a summary of the federal grants. It's through 7/23/2024, but it should be too current. I think that the last update that would have affected the balances was on July 23rd.
But there's actually no movement, so it's the same. We just, I guess we missed this, the date.
We missed what date?
I mean, changing the date, it's actually the last,
It should be
it's as
8/24
of- Yeah,
or the last week.
August,
end of last
August,
week.
yeah.
The end of last week to use this?
No, this is basically a summary. So the two first rows were detailed in the previous printouts, and then
Oh,
this one includes the,
Are you on this page here?
oh yeah, the last
Okay,
page. Yeah, and then there's the details not in so the Hagåtña River Channelization Watershed Feasibility Study is actually DOI, Inflation Reduction Act grant. And then you guys also did the electric vehicle under tap as well.
Yeah. So are there any of these that we're in danger, any immediate danger of losing them at the moment?
Well, ARP is really assuming that they can get the PO done by December.
Yeah.
That's the one at risk, but the rest of the dates for these other ones are listed on the grant, the period of performance, which is in the fourth column.
Yeah, okay. So it's really the ARP that is closest to expiring. And that's the reason we can't expend that is because of the administrative process of procurement.
Yeah, like unfortunately, like most agencies like mine, we have buyers in-house, so we're able to kind of skip that. As opposed to the smaller ones like HRRA where they have to leverage their buyers, at GSA. So you guys don't have the ability to create the
Yeah.
POs.
They're doing the buying also. at
The
GSA,
buying, yeah.
So we still don't have access to buyer capability.
Sure.
So does each item that's to be expended have to be approved? So I'm just wondering how you can have 90% covered and then only 5% expended.
Yeah, so the ARP,
There's just not a blanket approval for
yeah, so
certain categories of expenses.
yeah, so that I think that you guys need to update that report because there's nothing encumbered as of this fiscal year.
There's a discrepancy between the.
Yeah, the one that should be correct is gonna be the one that's on sorry, I should look at this before, but yeah, so that needs to be.
It's actually, it should have been in the expended column.
Yeah, it should have been
The
an
90,
expended column.
yes. It's
Yeah,
not,
to create the balance of 2,150.
yes.
So there's 0 encumbered. And 2,894 expended. That's what you have on the first report. 54,192 appropriated, encumbered 0 expenditure. 2,000.
Yeah, it should have been, what's that called? Shifted over, right? One column. Yeah.
That's correct, yes. It should have been.
So it's 90% expended.
Yes.
No, it's not 90% expended. Yep, we got appropriated 54,192, but we haven't spent hardly any of it.
No, so 49,000 was already expended.
Oh,
Yeah, that was
okay.
the expenditure, so
That's
yeah.
the- Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's why,
yeah, then the encumbrance would have been the 2008,
And the remaining balance
and
is
then
just the
remaining
2,000.
balance, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. So that report with that multiple road report is right
Yes.
then. Okay.
It's the first.
Got it. So there's only 2,151 left.
Left, yes.
So what did we, what was that money spent on?
What was the stuff of the thing?
Yes. It was for FEMA.
Did
Yeah,
we
so
get-
I think when you guys bought the desks, right, then all the damaged,
No, not on this one.
the computers.
There's computers, yes.
Yeah.
This was, I think, the money that was spent here were, because, for, during, pandemic. So it was mostly, there were computers, you remember, the video conferencing
Yeah,
unit,
you can pull your list, I have access to it, I didn't know that was gonna come up.
Yeah,
I can help you out
You
with that.
guys just send me the board
but it was mostly.
Yeah,
for-
I have access to
with
it,
that 49,140.
Yeah,
I thought it was to replace everything that was damaged on the thing.
yeah, I can pull it, cause I have
Yeah,
access
it
to
was
the
from.
archive, financial records, I don't think they do. You guys have?
Yeah, if I could just make a comment, so if you look here at the grant period, it actually started before like either of us got on board, so a lot of that was part and parcel over to COVID. So some of that was, we tried to use the remaining towards the reimbursement for the FEMA for the damages incurred at the office, but again, we're gonna have to kind of reconcile that because I think that's coming from another fund now, so
Yeah,
it's
there's.
just a matter of
It's
journal
possible.
vouchering or
Yeah,
switching the funds.
so it's gonna actually become available again, possibly. So if their PA claim ends up being approved, they're gonna need to kind of do like a paper transfer of those funds, on general fund, and then it gets reimbursed to the general fund. But because they didn't have, you guys didn't have general fund to cover it, you guys used their PA to cover
Yeah, I'm
the
assuming
cost.
not, sir, because they appropriate that for specific
Yeah,
purposes
and
outlined in the governor's
Yeah.
executive budget.
so but they're gonna need to do that at some.
They fronted it.
Yeah, then it's gonna become available and
Reimbursed
probably, yeah.
from-
Correct.
Yeah, so I think
Correct.
I had a meeting separately for PST to look at. Those should be adjudicated probably in the next couple of weeks, so they'll know if they're gonna get it reimbursed. So if they don't end up getting denied their claim, then just keep it under ARPA and just spend it. If their claim gets approved, then you would have to, actually do a journal voucher to cover it with general fund to replace that money. And then the reimbursement would cover the general money that covered it. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we can't use federal funds for federal reimbursement.
Okay, are there any other questions? Any other comments? Okay. So if nothing's further, then we will. Is there any management report or?
Yeah, not that I know of. You guys have something in the slide for the management report?
No.
Okay, so we'll just move on then to unfinished business.
Let me go.
So we have the Vector master plan. I know in the last meeting, we touched on this briefly. I don't want to spend too much time here, but I think we were gonna seek clarification. Oh no, now that I'm remembering it, it's probably reflected in the minutes. We needed to have a meeting with the governor's legal counsel to kind of understand what is the status of it. It's kind of like in limbo, I guess. the approval of the master plan or non-approval of the non-action. The legislature's lack of taking any action on the master plan is calls into question whether it's approved or not.
Yeah, it's I mean, it was really, we're kind of, you know, it lies under law because, you know, we had our North and Central Land Use Plan and there was an AG opinion about their inaction being akin to approval.
Yeah, well, that's the
Yeah.
same, that's kind of the same logic that we were
Yeah.
relying on as well.
Yeah.
That they failed to act, therefore it lapses into law.
We could share that opinion.
Okay.
If you're interested.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a side thing, we're not gonna solve anything today, but
I think maybe with one,
Oh my gosh.
perhaps the difference is that the legislature approved the North Central Land Use Plan contingent upon the next legislature approving the plan.
okay.
And then the AG said that one body, the legislature could not subjugate approval to another body, therefore it's approved. So it wasn't a blatant inaction.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it actually was approved, but they just put a condition on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then who, the court made that ruling or
Uh,
the AG?
Yeah, it's
The AG
AG
said-
level, yeah.
Okay, the AG said once it's approved, it's approved, they can kick the can down the road. to the
Yes,
next
yes, exactly.
one. Okay, well, that is different than ours, then.
So if you read this, it talks about the inaction from the next legislature. Yeah, being considered as a form of approval. I'll share it with you,
Okay, well,
because there's a provision in there where they're
It
just
might
talking about
provide
that.
some
There's two
like
scenarios of.
precedent
that
or
is-
context to the
Yeah, I'll
decision.
provide it and I'll provide it to legal as well.
Okay. Update on HRRA federal grants
I think we just did that kind of in a sense,
on the budget side.
yeah.
Okay.
So I guess and then the update is gonna come regarding the flood risk study or the flood feasibility study. That's pretty much their only performance or project, right?
Board appointments, I don't have any update on that unless anyone knows something. I don't know.
How many,
I think we have, well, I know that's, yeah, well, of course, we need to replace Rita. I committed for another term. Patty, are you still undecided?
I can come in.
Okay. West, how about you?
I mean, I would.
Okay, oh yeah, because you're technically appointed by the legislature, right? Felix,
oh, yeah,
you're in?
yes.
Okay. Carlos, I believe you committed to another term, is that right?
Yes, I do.
Okay, I do. And I know, Chris, you were inquiring on the length of the term. I think
Sure.
standard is 5 years, but we're looking to see if there are any options for not as long of a commitment. So I think Lola mentioned she's gonna take that to confirm with legal and come back and see if that's possible.
Yep, thank you.
So that's, and then I think Betty also hasn't decided where she's gonna be able to commit. But we did get an opinion that we can still continue to function as a board with can't remember what the grace period was. Then I wanna say 90 days, right? Yeah, within 90 days of the expiration of our term. So we have 90 days to essentially figure out whether we're gonna recommit or hang it up. And then have to seek a replacement. So there, where we're at with that. So onto the new business, that's really the meat of our discussion today. So first, Matt's gonna give us,
Yeah, I
Matt
guess,
and everyone will give us a background on the Hagåtña River flood study.
yeah, so I don't know how many of you board members are versed on like that's kind of occurred before, I guess since 2000. I mean, they've been working on it since 2005, you know, when they made, or actually 1975, there's been a series of studies that have gone on with different types of solutions. So when they did the draft integrated general review evaluation for the environmental assessment that was released in July 2020, that was received by the government of Guam, and then there was a decision that was made to terminate moving forward to the next phase of that, which would be the implementation. A lot of that had to do with the fact that the way that the authority under which the Army Corps formed that project required them to kind of move to that next phase. And part of making the decision of what the solution would be was that the solution had to meet the cost benefit threshold that they have set within their rules. So they canceled moving forward on that, but there's the work product itself when it came to like the hydraulics, the environmental assessment, the solutions, a lot of that stuff's still pretty relevant. And I guess after this came out, because Lacia, when she was the executive director, she didn't include us. Usually, and we're usually on all of the flood projects. We could advise her that we could still move forward with using the Army Corps because at the end of the day, they're national experts. I mean, even their Center of Excellence for floods or flooding and flood management is with the Army Corps. They're also the party that does updates to the flood risk maps through letters of map amendments or letters of map revisions. So their work products usually keep are within that scope of where they're going to update these types of things. And also they make sure that they cover all the things that are necessary for NEPA as well. So when
I do recall, just to clarify, when we were going through that, I do recall that Lola's predecessor, Tyrone, was involved in the discussion.
Yeah.
How involved? I mean, I want to say that at some point he was kind of made the lead, maybe in that.
Yeah, so they made a decision basically because the solution didn't update the floodplain as well.
Yeah.
So it didn't modify it, right? And that's a huge task with the major investment. So you're going to your engineering, I'm sure you understand the cost and the complexity of updating the floodplain because Agana, the historic district which you guys have jurisdiction over, it sits at the bottom of the largest hydrologic basin of the world. So you have water that comes from the backs of Lenzing Barragata to I could provide some maps, but the amount of water that that concentrates into Agana at the distance they come from, there's no other place like that on the wall. So it's extremely complex, and there's a lot of considerations that need to be made too because it's its own ecosystem as well. So doing an environmental analysis on the solution is critical as well because you can propose something, but you need to make sure that you cover all of the other areas and do all the other consultations, including historic. So that being said, when Lola brought it up that they were doing an RFP, I'm like, and I looked at the scope of services, I told her that, this is a pretty watered down scope of services to what's actually required to, do what they need to do, or at least, or attempt to achieve their objectives. So, while the previous studies and work products didn't align with what we were trying to do as government and also with you guys, it doesn't mean that they can't still do the work that's being proposed now. So I actually provided the scope of services. I'm sorry, I apologize, I didn't know people were going to be on Zoom. So you guys should have them in your packet. It's kind of like a real high level overview of what's typically conducted under a flood risk feasibility study. And even at that, it's not going to provide you with the information that you need, all of it. And then if you went out to bid, right, because you can't sole source system matrix, the chances of it going over budget, are extremely high. So we brought this to Army Corps to just ask if it was possible to complete this and kind of go with your guys' objectives without committing to any type of solution, just coming up with checking the boxes based off of the grant application, which are basically the pages 4 through 6 or 4 and 5, and then that's just to break down the cost. So they can do it, and it's funny because the project's titled the watershed and channelization feasibility study, but the scope of work didn't include that. So they can include that as a possible alternative to addressing flooding within the. But they're willing to also probably present their next board meeting about what the limitations of their study would be. But trying to go out to bid on this thing and being able to get somebody qualified to do it within this budget's not very likely. And since it has to be competitive too, I'm pretty sure that Matrix might not be able to bid for this because they actually developed the scope. So there's a conflict. So yeah, so I guess the choice that needs to be made is whether you want to go down the route of hiring Army Corps who believe that they can complete this project within the available budget.
Could I ask a couple of questions? So when you read the scope of work and you felt like it was lacking,
Yeah.
right? What were the gaps? What do you feel like was lacking, and what would?
Yeah, so I can provide the last study that they did, because the intention, at least within the
The
grant.
last study that the Army Corps did?
Yeah, so this is just on the flood risk aspect of it, basically characterizing the flood risk and who's
Is this
in,
the last study they did in Haggadah specifically or another? study?
in Haggadah specific
When-
2020.
when-
in 2020.
Okay. So whatever study they did to come up with those
Yeah.
options that we then.
Yeah, and the thing is that in the grant application that was submitted under Vasia's I guess management, they described it as basically updating the flood risk assessment component that Army Corps did. So and it's basically the way the Army Corps would do it is they would actually just do an analysis of the changes in the environment, how that impacts hydrology, but they have all this information already, where they can check a lot of these boxes. So doing some of these things that are in scope, like going out and talking to people and asking about, doing a survey about how they're impacted, what's their observations, how does that compare to their models? That's something that they do. That's part of their process already. And even
they've done before.
and they've done before, so they actually have all the archived records of previous observations in addition to their modeling, also from the rain sensors that they have. So they have access to a lot of this information that's already available that the proposal was proposing to collect, or from a third,
So it's
basically.
basically like rework.
Yeah, rework, yeah. So they can update these things and look at, new developments and come up with a wider array of solutions than what was previously provided, because they're not restricted under the authority that they had. Because part of the way that they did the previous project was, it kind of like confined them to providing a solution that, had a useful life of 50 years, and then also was within their cost benefit ratio, threshold. So, if it's a $50 million, project, the economic benefit had to, be so much to be able to justify them to.
Did they give you an idea of how much it was gonna cost?
Yeah, they did. So this one was the May 2021. They did a general reevaluation study, and they provided. You guys want to have these documents?
I remember
Yeah,
somewhere in my archive that have a.
Yeah, so they had
PowerPoint, but-
they had a benefit cost table with 3 options, or 4 options really. Was a swamp detention basin, flood wall, levee, and channel conveyance, terraced floodplain and channel conveyance, and last one, non-structural. So the optimal solution was to do C, which was the flood wall, levee, and channel conveyance. But the total cost was going to be $44.7 million. This is in May of 21. So
What I,
if you,
what I recall was that their preferred option was not to construct anything.
yeah, so that's,
To
so
part
the,
of the buildings that were in the flood.
so the difference is that the ones that they selected, right, they had to select was the one that met their cost benefit threshold. They never determined, they didn't actually determine that the structural solution was not the preferred, it was just the one that they had to go under their authority. Because, you know, it's just, you know, basically just, if they can't justify the costs, they can't, they don't recommend it, right, so.
If I could add to that would be the net economic development plan.
Yeah,
But there is an opportunity where they can pursue the locally preferred plan, in which if we were to get this approved through Congress, then Congress would put the bill of the economic development plan, and we would have to cover the difference.
yeah, but there's a greater component there that we would have to address before we can go down. Yeah. And
So I'm just trying to think though, like if that is if we're trying to compare whether we move forward with this RFP or go back to the Army Corps, what's the Army Corps
Yeah, because-
cost of how will we pay for it?
yeah, we could pay for it directly through these funds. So we actually have another project, which is the Matic one, which we're doing, which is a flood risk management project. And we're doing through the Army Corps through the same fund source. So there was two awards really. There was one that was for us and one for HRRA. And we're doing it through them. And we actually have two other projects currently that are doing the same thing, which are in Maritza, the Barcenas area, and then the Pinelli area.
But you mentioned 44 million.
Yeah, and I could provide these to you. It's part of the general reevaluation study, and then the appendix is the hydraulics. So, but if you look at the proposal under the grant, I guess the intent, there's a disconnect between the intentions that you guys had or they had for this project and the actual scope of services. Because the scope of services is ultimately a renewal of a previous study.
Yeah.
You know, an update basically making it current. So it doesn't really propose, you know, ensure that, you know, yeah, it's specific to, you know, the river channelization and watershed expansion and it doesn't, you know, have anything in there to where your ultimate outcome is going to be an update to the flood map.
And if I could just add like the broad characterization of those three projects, and when the governor wanted us to pursue this, she said, we want the city out of the floodplain. Okay, that's simple. So it's going to require engineering to do that. But she said, can you do it in the most green way possible, right? To be environmentally, you know, to have a stewardship for the environment. So that's why you have the floodplain terrace as the one viable option. But even that is not going to provide the level of protection. So the discovery phase at Matrix is going to lead the people down in terms of how do you want to handle your flooding problem. You're going to have a whole array of strategies. But at the end of the day, it's going to be about flood risk management. And so our core already answered that question. Do you want to be in the floodplain or not? And here's the engineering solution. We did look at green infrastructure as an option, you know, these kind of terrace, kind of rice terrace. But it's not technically not engineering viable to give us a protection that's needed.
Yeah, just because of the
That's
sheer,
the D, right?
Yeah.
just because of the sheer volume of water that comes down there.
Okay.
And then you have other factors that you have to kind of come into play that the outflow is into the ocean, right? And, you know, you have sea level rise as it is, and then, you know, with climate change as well, you know, hotter temperatures also equate to more intense rain events. So you have these, you know, this relationship with trends in climate change that need to be accounted for too. So it's gonna. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, this is Chris. Quick question. Do any of these studies address storm surge during high tide storms?
Yeah, it actually, the benchmark is the 100-year flood event. So that's basically your most extreme, right? So you're gonna try and prevent, you know, because the floodplain and is based off of, you know, either your 2% or your 100-year. Otherwise, you're in a floodway.
And I would add that the engineering designs will not get us out of the VE zone.
What's the VE?
It's a,
Storm surge inundation.
yeah, so that's coastal flooding, yeah. So,
That's what I've been told by every civil engineer I know. So there's no way to stop it.
yeah, so it's just, a matter of setting expectations and seeing
Yeah.
maybe the alternative is to do the best that we can to at least just manage the amount of flooding that kind of occurs as opposed to having the subjective of updating the flood maps to where we're getting properties out of the flood, out of a flood zone.
Yeah, especially for future development,
Just as an FYI, the flood hazard study that was done to update the ferns in 2020 did not show any change in the flood boundaries based on the hydraulic modifications of the two rivers. So that's already been done.
Yeah, so I think that part of the narrative, at least within the grant that they wrote, was like, didn't account for the upgrade of the two bridges, and,
Yeah, which has already been done. Yeah.
which was already done. I guess the one thing that they need to really factor in is there is some new development, obviously, the cost for this there, but that was already an impervious surface. And then, with the observations from Marwar, to see if, the amount of flooding was, commensurate with their modeling that they did in previous stuff.
So where do you recommend we go from here?
I mean, if you're really just trying to just make sure that you have the most up-to-date information, which the grant really is, the scope of work that was provided in the grant, really is doing, I would just recommend just going with them again and them providing as much of a wider range of options for you. But but we would just have to lower the expectation about what's the outcome for those solutions. So we can work with Army Corps to ask for like what level of mitigation or reduction in flooding in some of the critical areas that those solutions would provide as being the measures, instead of, we're gonna get you out of, raise you above the base flood elevation, which just really is impossible just because of, these properties, height relative to sea level, and then, the amount of storm surge. So if you're only 6 feet above, the sea level and you have 12-foot storm surges, you know what I mean? There's not much you can do about that. So, yeah, I recommend still trying to address it because it is a problem. And we saw that with this last typhoon.
Yeah, we've always said that it's not as if it's preventing development and things like that. It's still happening. There's just, you have to design.
You just have to build above the base flood elevation essentially. So like say with the what's that called, community first building?
Mhm.
So their floor levels above the base flood elevation. So like when they go to the floodplain manager, or it makes them exempt because they're able to show that their the 100-year flood level rises below their base elevation, which would be their floor level.
So they're out of the, I guess.
Yeah, they're just built up. You just have to build it up, just like Ambo as well.
So they kind of raise their footing.
Yeah, the attic buildings are not. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you guys are like kind of like
Still,
concrete
yeah.
pillars.
And we had to.
And so you can
Get approval to.
yeah, and you can get an exemption to have required flood insurance.
I think the long-term objective is to optimize as much as possible to allow for the long-term economic development of, so that we can, as much as possible, attract new developments and new buildings and so forth, so.
Yeah,
That is the goal.
and I get that it's a liability, right? All these properties being in flood zones.
Mhm.
It doesn't necessarily, it just makes it more expensive to build.
Yeah.
But there's not really, without a hefty investment, you know what I mean? You're not gonna be able to really accomplish much.
So did they say, you mentioned here the cost of 44 million, but that's for I'm assuming that's for the actual implementation of that option,
Yeah, just
right? So what would the cost be for the feasibilities, or like the study, the feasibility.
Oh, just the update, how much was our last one? So we're doing Mauricio for around this price. Right?
Okay.
Yeah, and
The same amount that we have in the
yeah,
grant,
a little bit less, and then
like about.
and we're fully funding the one for Finelli, and that one's only like $300,000. And and I'm in on these meetings, and they have like a, whole team of engineers. I mean, people that are specialized, whether it's geotechnical or hydraulics.
So for the same amount of money that we have in this grant, we
Yeah,
could hire the Army Corps to do this.
Yeah, because their objective is not to profit. You get into where they start outsourcing things, when they go into construction, but on the A&E and the feasibility side, usually it's all in-house. And they just leverage, whatever experts that they can.
So you were recommending that they come and make a proposal to us?
Or no, we just provide them, tell them what we want them to do. So we have an MOA to where you can do this, and then we just make a request saying that we have these funds, can you do this? And then we just sign an agreement. So we have a mechanism already to where we're allowed to do this outside of the process because our MOA between the government and Guam.
So would that be drafting up like kind of a scope of services similar?
Yeah, so we talked to them, it was like, we just need to kind of move forward with like your objectives, the outcomes that you want to have. So we can meet with them again to say, here's what's possible for you guys to do with this money, and then we could, come back to you and say, here's what they're able to do with this amount of money. Do you want to, move forward with it? But we don't even want to, but I guess at this point, it's a matter of just choosing whether you want to keep going down this route. I mean, it doesn't mean that you're locked into Army Corps after this. It's just a matter of whether you want to, we're going to spend our time to further pursue them. Yeah. And and then we have a local representative, Mike Terlaki, who is here on Guam.
Yeah.
Speaker's brother.
I mean, I think our objectives are pretty well laid out in the master plan.
Yeah, and but I guess that's the issue, right? Is that you're gonna have to concede on certain things, or make some adjustments because it's just not gonna be feasible. And then and then you have to also consider a lot of other things, right? Because even when you do develop it, especially when it's in excess of an acre, you have to do stormwater management and all these things within our local, and that's just within our local regulatory. So, and those are going to be difficult already, you know what I mean? So there are some projects in there that are, questionable to whether they're feasible in terms of whether they're going to be able to address on-site stormwater management, in such a heavily flooded area. And I'm sure, do you help with permitting and land use all the time? I'm sure you understand the complexity of doing development in hazardous areas.
I think just there's one alternative that's not consistent with the HRRA master plan, which is the detention basin.
Yeah,
It's just gonna convert that wetland to a big lake essentially.
and like if you want to talk about restoring some of those things, it used to be, there used to be a lot of water down there. A lot of the flooding kind of like, if you read the story, or if you go through the history of studies, a lot of it had to do with it started after they started to backfill Paseo, because that actually cut off the natural, water. There's a river that ran through Serena's Bridge, basically. I mean, there's a river there. Changed the the flow path, the natural flow path. And then, and I know that we're worried about the historic properties that, there's impact to a lot of those lower Mongmong properties that we get lots of complaints from constituents, in regards to.
The one behind behind the Hagen Shopping Center, or
The
lower one?
Yeah,
lower,
across the valley.
Like over.
so like when you go into turn into the church, like the ones that are along the side, they get really bad.
So yeah, I guess do we need to formally vote on this, or can we just?
I mean, if you guys want to make a motion to further pursue going through them, because what's gonna happen is we make a letter request, they provide their formal proposal. And then you guys can make the decision because there has to be a contract in this piece. So you guys can vote to approve
I think we
something
should-
that's more, you know,
To make the motion.
To further pursue, the feasibility study going through the Army Corps.
as opposed to doing a full-fledged procurement.
based on the scope of work.
Yeah, that's the other thing is that they would, you know, because they looked at this and they're like. These are all the other things that we should be doing to kind of just evaluate the hazard itself, right? And then the solutions are gonna be based off of whatever their analysis is. So, yeah, it's just the one that they've been straight up that they can't really achieve without, you know, maybe, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars is, you know, making a material change to the flood maps.
And if we, I'm sorry, can we just clarify, if we go with the Army Corps, then we don't need to deal with procurement? That's-
They're experts at it and that, you know, it's a lot different because you're not restricted, because if you're gonna go to them with your money, there's a lot more flexibility. And we've seen that with some of the other things that we do. It's just a matter of when you're using their money, yeah, they're a lot more restricted.
Can I just clarify that this feasibility study is gonna include updating all like the scientific, whatever analysis
yeah.
that needs to happen? But it's also going to give us a portfolio of options, implementation options. And recommend.
Yeah, and if you guys have, you know, if you can think of ones that you're willing to do, because the big one that we really need to look at is property, right? Because, you know, it's and we do that with all our projects, you have to go through the state. That's another part where we're able to kind of work with the budget because a lot of the real estate side of it, and all the due diligence report, you know, title reports, like those things we can do in kind to kind of offset the cost, so we kind of expand their more specialized services. So, you know, because we have access to language, so
How long does it usually take for the whole process?
it's like 18. So 2 years. Yeah, it makes it a lot easier when you have all the money
18
upfront.
months to 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, but that's what that's the current period of performance that's being proposed, so.
Well, I don't think it's gonna hurt us to get to look at that option. Especially if we can potentially sidestep for kids. And get a more comprehensive, like next outs, yeah. So,
Yeah,
so then, can I get a motion?
I'll make that.
To proceed with our course for
Yes.
proposal?
Second.
All in favor?
I,
Hi,
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Matt. Okay, so the last item is the hiring of our new HRRA executive director, Gillette Young. So Gillette's application and resume was included in the packet for all of you to review. She's done a lot of things. She has an extensive background in nonprofit. She also worked for Manly's Guahan and Kaha in the executive director role. So she's no stranger to leadership. She knows grant writing. She's a historian and a genealogist, and she has a lot of passion for our culture. And I think she is a good candidate for this role. Are there any questions?
hi, it's Chris again. I have a question. Does this appointment come with a term that she commits to? I just asked because I noticed some of her jobs were for very short periods of time.
Yeah. I know for when she was the director of Kaha, she had to step down because her father was, she had to basically step in and be the primary caretaker for her father. That took her away from that. I don't know, I'm assuming it's an at will, right? Like with most of the hires or directors are At will, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it's also, you know, assuming that they win the next,
Well,
there's
that's,
really-
yeah, there's always that.
Yeah.
There's always that,
There's-
so, I mean, definitely that could be, if there's another party or another obviously another administration of some kind is gonna take over, and if they're not happy with, or if they want their own person, then that's just gonna happen. All of us could also be replaced as well. That goes without saying.
Thank you.
I would
But I
like to
can-
say- Mm.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Carlos.
No, if I may, I would like to say that I have had the opportunity to work along with Gillette Leon Guerrero for a number of years, and I can attest of her experience and leadership capacity, and with this background that I think is quite appropriate for our agency, I would like to make a motion to accept this nomination, this appointment.
I can second that motion.
Okay, second. Okay, all in favor?
I,
Any opposed? Okay. Motion carried. I'm excited to have somebody in the role. I think that's really been a big hindrance to us getting anywhere with any of these initiatives, so I'm really hoping Gillette is gonna help us to push forward on the opportunities that we have in front of us.
I completely agree. I think based on your application packet, she should definitely be the perfect fit for this role. Very pleased to see someone as credentialed as her, taking on this role.
For I'm sure whatever she doesn't feel comfortable in, she has, you know, resources and partners and ESP and all the other agencies to help her out where she might have some blind spots. So thank you, Matt.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, that is it. I think we have our next, or do we have a date set? Not yet for our next meeting?
None yet.
Yeah, okay. But I think we did talk about this last time. We were trying to stay on a schedule. Is it
It's the Wednesday, so that's,
yeah, first Wednesday of the month, is it?
yes,
Okay.
on the 30th,
So that
October
would,
3rd,
that would be October 2nd.
2nd, 4th, yeah, October 2nd.
It's okay. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get Remy, when you can, get the announcement out
Okay,
for our next meeting.
yes,
And then also I'll have a sit down with Gillette to try to, well, I'm sure, I'll set up a standing meeting with Gillette to make sure that, you know, she gets the guidance she needs to just tackle getting all these things under control.
But I guess so now for leave, and you guys got the budget that you guys requested in the final past budget from last week, Friday?
Oh, we got it?
Yes, the 2025. So not only did you not get defunded, the requests remained unchanged.
Yeah.
Through the list.
Who was that? Funding what all about?
I think it was
Senator Parkinson, really?
Yeah. That's correct, right?
Just him? Who else?
That's all I read.
Okay, we can take it offline. I mean, I heard about it, I heard that they were discussing it, but that's nothing new. I just feel like every time budget rolls around, they're always looking for where to shop, so. We're kind of an easy target. Okay.
We'll move to adjourn.
Thank you. Any second?
Second.
Yeah, all in favor? Any opposed?
thanks, everybody.
We're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for stepping on the meeting.
Empty, too empty.
Hey, look, it's 5 o'clock.
How or not an engineer? Oh, yeah,
Oh, are these like several copies or?
You're a regulatory expert.
Yeah. Bread and butter. Yeah.
This is from the last one? Matt,
Yeah, that's from the last one.
do you mind,
You can provide it.
yeah, just send it here. I don't want the paper. It's just gonna collect that somewhere in my house.
But
Can you just send it via email to all of us?
Yeah, I guess it'd be.
That would be perfect, thank you.
So you have like I'll provide like a history of all of them as well.
This is what I remember seeing. This was the, like the slide deck, right? You have the summary of that.
Yeah, it's basically something.
Okay,
Yeah, but really it's the whole NED, like the economic plan.
this was the one from 2021 rather. Here, you guys can take a look. But
Yeah, so we updated our hazard mitigation plan to be a little bit like accurate in terms of potential loss from hazard, so. We have an ability to adjust already, which we're probably gonna do within the next year.
Yeah.
Creation of potential loss, but all the new buildings here are well built, so they're not at risk. So when we look at like, say all the new developments that are above